Once upon a time, in a village nestled at the edge of a vast, mysterious forest, lived a curious young man named Kwame. Kwame was known throughout the village for his adventurous spirit and his love for storytelling. But Kwame had one flaw. He spoke too much and too carelessly. His words often caused trouble, though he never seemed to notice the harm they did. One day, feeling restless, Kwame decided to venture into the depths of the forest, a place where few dared to go. The elders of the village had always warned against wandering too far into the woods, for strange things were said to dwell there: spirits, creatures, and the unknown. But Kwame, eager for a new story to tell, paid no heed to the warnings. As he walked deeper into the forest, the trees became thicker, their twisted branches casting eerie shadows. The air grew cooler, and an unsettling silence fell around him. It was as if the forest itself was watching his every move. Kwame, however, pressed on, his curiosity overpowering his sense of caution. After hours of walking, Kwame stumbled upon something unusual. At the base of an ancient tree, half buried in the soil, lay a human skull. Its hollow eye socket seemed to stare directly at him, and its cracked, yellowed surface hinted at age far beyond his understanding. Kwame felt a shiver run down his spine, but knelt down to examine it more closely. As he crouched near the skull, something strange happened. A voice, a low, raspy whisper, emanated from the skull itself. "Why have you disturbed my rest?" the voice asked. Kwame jumped back in shock. His heart raced as he looked around, but there was no one in sight, only the skull. Who are you?" Kwame stammered, his voice shaky. The skull's empty eye socket seemed to narrow in on him. "I was once like you. Now I am a reminder of the consequences of careless speech." Kwame, though frightened, felt a surge of excitement. A talking skull. Surely this would be the story of a lifetime. He could see it now, the entire village gathered around him, captivated by his tale of the strange skull that spoke. Ignoring the chill that crawled down his spine, he reached out and gently lifted the skull from the earth. "I must show this to the village," he said aloud, more to himself than to the skull. The skull, however, did not respond. Its eerie silence was unsettling, but Kwame's mind was already racing with thoughts of fame. He carefully wrapped the skull in cloth and set off toward the village, his heart pounding with excitement. When Kwame returned to the village, he wasted no time gathering everyone around. The villagers, curious and skeptical, formed a tight circle around him as he stood proudly in the center, holding the skull high for all to see. "Behold," he proclaimed, "I have found a skull that speaks. It has shared secrets with me, and it will speak again." When he finally reached the village, he went straight to the chief's hut. Breathless and eager, he called out to the chief and the elders, gathering them together. "You won't believe what I've found," he exclaimed, pulling the skull out of his bag. The villagers crowded around, their faces filled with curiosity and concern. The young man placed the skull in front of the chief, expecting it to start speaking just as it had in the forest. But the skull remained silent. An awkward silence fell over the crowd, and the young man began to sweat. "It spoke to me. I swear," he insisted, but the villagers looked at him with doubt. The chief, a wise and cautious man, raised an eyebrow. "Are you playing tricks on us?" he asked sternly. No, it really did speak. It told me it was a warning about those who talk too much," the young man exclaimed, desperately trying to convince them. The chief shook his head. "We do not take such things lightly here," he said. "If this is some kind of joke, it could lead to severe consequences. Be careful with your words, young man." But the young man was too stubborn, too eager for glory to back down. "I'm not lying. This skull talked. It spoke to me in the forest," he shouted, growing more frustrated. The villagers began to murmur among themselves, unsure of what to believe. Finally, the chief spoke again, his voice cold and commanding. "If you are telling the truth, then let the skull speak again. But if you are lying, there will be a heavy price to pay for wasting our time." The young man's heart raced. He stared at the skull, willing it to speak, but the skull remained as lifeless as ever. Sweat trickled down his face as the seconds dragged on. The village elders watched him closely, their expressions turning from curiosity to suspicion. After what felt like an eternity, the chief stood up, his face grim. "You have wasted our time with your foolishness," he said. "In our village, we do not tolerate lies, especially when they involve the dead. You will be punished for your deceit." The young man's heart sank. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had happened. Why wouldn't the skull speak? Had it all been a dream? The punishment was swift. The young man was banished from the village for dishonoring the chief and the elders. He was left to wander the wilderness alone, shunned by the people he had once lived among. But the story doesn't end there. As he wandered through the forest, bitter and angry, he heard the voice of the skull again. "Now you see the price of speaking too much," it whispered. The young man froze, his heart pounding once more. "Why didn't you speak in the village?" he demanded angrily. The skull's hollow voice echoed in the silence of the forest. "I told you, I am a warning. Those who speak without thinking will find themselves in trouble. You sought glory without considering the consequences, and now you have paid the price." The young man's anger turned to despair. He had lost everything because of his foolish desire to impress others. He dropped to his knees in the forest, realizing that the skull had been right all along. Days turned into weeks as the young man wandered the forest, haunted by the voice of the skull. He had learned a painful lesson, one that he would never forget. Sometimes, silence is wiser than words. The skull's eerie warning echoed in his mind with every step he took, a constant reminder of the price he had paid for his careless words. The forest, once a place of curiosity and adventure, had become a prison of regret. Over time, the young man grew older and wiser, but he never returned to his village. He became a wanderer, moving from place to place, sharing his story with those he met along the way. "Be careful with your words," he would say. "You never know when they might come back to haunt you." His tale became a legend, passed down from generation to generation, a chilling reminder of the power of words and the importance of silence. And so, the story of the talking skull lived on, long after the young man had disappeared. The villagers, too, remembered the lesson he had learned. They would tell the tale around their fires at night, warning their children about the dangers of speaking too much and the consequences of seeking attention for the wrong reasons. The skull's warning had been clear. Words have power, and those who misuse them will suffer the consequences. In the end, the young man had found his adventure, but it had cost him everything. The talking skull, with its eerie voice and haunting message, had taught him a lesson that would last a lifetime. A lesson that, even in death, carried more weight than he had ever imagined. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through the eerie tale of the talking skull. This ancient African folktale teaches us the importance of being mindful of our words and the consequences of speaking without thought. The moral is simple, yet powerful. Silence can often be wiser than words, and seeking attention for the wrong reasons can lead to downfall. We hope this story left you with something to think about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends who love creepy and thought-provoking folktales. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another captivating story. We have many more fascinating African folktales and legends coming your way. The tale of the talking skull teaches us that words have great power. If we speak without thinking, we risk causing harm to ourselves and others. Sometimes silence can be more valuable than the loudest voice. It is a reminder to think carefully before we speak, for our words can lead to either wisdom or destruction. Comment below and let us know your thoughts about the moral of this story. Have you ever found yourself in trouble because of something you said? We'd love to hear your experiences. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember, sometimes silence is golden.